When a father's dying wish clashes with a sister's demand for cash, a quiet battle erupts over a legacy of living trees. AITA for refusing to share my inheritance with my sister? My father didn't leave a will. He left a library. Arthur Finch was a quiet man of soil and silence, a master horticulturalist who cultivated rare specimen trees for wealthy estates and public gardens. His legacy wasn't in a bank vault. It was rooted across 7 acres of Pennsylvania hillside, our family property, the arboretum. To the outside world, it was a picturesque, if slightly unkempt, collection of beautiful trees. To us, it was a living biography. The towering ginkgo biloba he planted when I was born, its leaves like tiny golden fans. The rare Franklinia alitamaha, a tree extinct in the wild, which he nursed from a seedling the year my mother died. The sprawling oak with the treehouse where he'd read to my sister, Elise, and me. I'm Maya, 32, a graphic designer in Philadelphia. My world was one of pixels and deadlines, but my anchor was the monthly drive to the arboretum. Dad, growing more stooped but never less sharp, would tour me around, pointing out a new graft, a struggling sapling, the subtle shift of lichen on bark. It was our language. Elise, 29, never spoke it. Her world was louder, faster, glossier. She lived in LA, chasing the shimmer of influencer status, a life of curated photo shoots, brand deals that never quite materialized, and a relentless performative optimism she funded through a series of temporary loans from Dad and, when he grew wary, from me. Her calls home were brief, sparkling updates on near misses with fame. Dad listened, sighed, and would later point out a resilient weed pushing through gravel. Adaptation, he'd say, though I was never sure if he meant the weed or himself. The crack in our world wasn't sudden, it was a slow split like frost heaving on stone. Dad's diagnosis, pancreatic cancer, was a brutal, quick sentence. He declined with a swiftness that stole our breath. In his final weeks, in the sterile hospice room that smelled of disinfectant and dying flowers, we had our last real conversation. Elise was on a flight, finalizing a vital partnership. His hand, thin and mapped with blue veins, gripped mine. "The arboretum," he whispered, his voice raspy. "It's yours, Maya. You understand its bones. The cercidifilum, the soil is too alkaline. You'll need to amend it." He was giving me care instructions, not an asset. Elise, she sees what things cost, not what they're worth. There's money in the tin box, the maple syrup tin, for the taxes, for you. He slipped into morphine sleep before I could ask for clarity. He died 2 days later, with Elise sobbing theatrically by his bedside, having arrived just in time for the final act. The funeral was a small, damp affair under a leaden sky. Mourners were few, old gardening colleagues, a couple of neighbors, Elise and me. After the last "sorry for your loss" drifted away, we stood at the edge of the property, looking at the house, the barn, the endless sleeping trees. Elise lit a cigarette, her manicured hand trembling slightly. "Well," she said, exhaling a plume of smoke into the cold air, "this is a fucking mess." "I know," I said, thinking of the silent house, the unwatered greenhouse. "No, Maya, the situation," she said, turning to me. Her grief had already evaporated, replaced by a focused, calculating energy. "This place, it's a dinosaur. It's got to be worth a fortune in land value alone. We need to get a realtor in here like yesterday." The air left my lungs. "Sell it, Elise. This is Dad's life's work." "It's dead wood and property tax, sis," she said, her voice cool. "My life is in LA. I can't manage a tree farm from across the country, and you've got your cute little city life. Let's be smart, liquidate, split the money, and move on. I've got debts piling up. This is my fresh start." A cold dread settled in my stomach. This was the crack, not just a disagreement, but a fundamental schism in how we valued everything our father had been. "Dad, he talked to me about it," I said carefully. "He wanted it cared for. He left it to me." Elise froze, her cigarette halfway to her lips. Her eyes, so like our father's in shape, but nothing else in expression, narrowed. "What does that mean, left it to me? He didn't have a will. He told me, verbally, in the hospice, the arboretum is mine. He left you money separately." A laugh burst from her, a sharp, brittle sound. "Verbal? Are you kidding me? That's not legal, Maya. That's you manipulating a dying man. We are his children. We inherit equally. That's the law." "He said you see cost, not worth," I said, the words tumbling out, harsh and true. Her face contorted beautifully into a mask of furious betrayal. "You selfish bitch, you're trying to cut me out. You've always looked down on me with your stable job and your sensible shoes. Dad loved me too. I deserve my half." "It's not about halves, Elise. It's about his wishes. This place was his heart. You never even liked it here." "That doesn't matter," she screamed, her voice echoing off the bare maples. "What matters is that I get what I'm owed. I demand my inheritance, 50% of the appraised value of this entire property, and if you won't give it to me willingly, I'll sue you for it. Try to prove that fairy tale about a deathbed promise." She threw her cigarette onto the frosty ground, grinding it out with her designer heel, a violent final gesture. "You have 1 week to come to your senses, then I call a lawyer." She strode to her rented convertible and peeled out, spraying gravel. I stood alone in the gathering dusk, surrounded by the silent, sleeping trees my father had loved, feeling the crack widen into a chasm that threatened to swallow his entire legacy and what was left of my family. The week that followed was a special kind of hell, a silent countdown punctuated by the ping of hostile texts. Elise, Day 2. "Have you contacted a realtor? I have one ready. He says comps are strong." Me, "I'm not selling, Elise." Elise, "Then buy me out. My share is worth $350K minimum." $350,000. The number swam before my eyes. I had savings for a condo down payment, not a ransom for my own birthright. The maple syrup tin Dad mentioned yielded $18,000 in old bills and a bank book for a savings account with $42,000, his life's liquid savings, meant for the property's brutal annual taxes. It was a lifeline, not a lottery. I was paralyzed, swinging between righteous fury and crippling guilt. Was I being selfish? Was preserving a collection of trees worth destroying my relationship with my only sibling? In the quiet of the old farmhouse, surrounded by the ghost of my father and every warped floorboard and dusty gardening book, the pressure grew unbearable. On day 4, I broke. I did what millions of the desperate and conflicted do. I turned to the anonymous void of Reddit. Sitting at my father's ancient oak desk, I typed out my anguish on r/am I the asshole. Title: AITA for refusing to split my inheritance with my sister after our father's deathbed wish. Post: My 32 female father passed recently. He was a horticulturist who left behind a 7-acre arboretum, his life's work. He had no formal will, but in his final days, he explicitly told me the property was to be mine, as I'm the only one who understands and loves it. He also left a separate sum of cash, about $60K, which I believe was intended to cover taxes and upkeep. My sister, 29 female, who has never shown interest in the property and lives across the country, is demanding I either sell it and give her half the proceeds or pay her an equivalent cash buyout, $350K plus. She says our father's verbal wish is meaningless and that she's legally entitled to half. I refused, wanting to honor my dad. She's threatened to sue. Am I the asshole for refusing to say no and trying to keep the property whole? I hit submit, feeling a wave of shame and relief. Almost immediately, the comments began trickling in. Just here for the T47. NTA. Your sister sees a payday, not a legacy. Sorry for your loss. Throwaway/garden gnome. Soft YTA. No will equals intestate succession. She is legally entitled to have, regardless of verbal statements. You're setting yourself up for a nasty and expensive court battle you'll probably lose. The legal perspective hit me like a physical blow. I knew nothing about probate law. Was my father's last wish truly legally worthless? Then a longer comment from a user with the flair verified probate lawyer appeared. My heart hammered as I read it. U/estates/ETAL verified probate lawyer. First, sorry for your loss. This is a difficult situation. In most jurisdictions, your sister is correct. With no valid will, the estate passes via intestacy laws, typically in equal shares to children. A verbal deathbed will has a very, very high bar to clear. You'd need compelling corroborating evidence, witnesses, recordings, written notes, to prove it was his clear, final intent, made while of sound mind. It's an uphill battle. That said, her demand for a $350K buyout is just a starting point for negotiation. The property must be professionally appraised, and its value is not just raw land value. Specialized horticultural property can be tricky. You could argue for a lower valuation due to maintenance costs, conservation easements, etc. You are NTA for wanting to honor your father, but you need a lawyer, not Reddit, yesterday. The validation that I wasn't morally wrong was overshadowed by the cold legal reality. I was likely going to lose. Either I'd have to sell or go into massive debt to buy out my sister's legal share of a place she'd never loved. Elise's deadline came and went. She didn't call a lawyer, she escalated. I woke up to a string of furious messages from extended family members I barely knew. Aunt Linda: how dare you try to disinherit your own sister? Your father would be ashamed. Cousin Mark: heard you're pulling a fast one, Maya. Family sticks together. Split it fairly. Elise had launched a smear campaign, painting me as a greedy, conniving daughter who was manipulating a dead man's words to steal from her poor, struggling sister. The pressure was now coming from all sides, a vice of familial obligation and public shaming. In a panic, I called the only lawyer in town, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Henderson, who had done some work for Dad. He listened patiently, his voice gravelly. Your father, Artie, he talked about this, Mr. Henderson said, surprising me. Not formally, over coffee. He was worried about this exact scenario. He said Elise would sell the trees for scrap. Maya gets the roots. The roots have to stay. Can that help? I asked, desperate. It's an anecdote, not evidence, but it shows consistent intent. Did he keep a journal, a notebook, anything written? I spent the next 48 hours in a frantic archaeological dig through my father's study. I found gardening logs, weather notes, plant orders, and then in a drawer filled with old seed packets, I found a simple black-bound notebook. It wasn't a will. It was a journal. The entries were sparse, practical, but one, dated just 2 months before his diagnosis, made my breath catch. Spoke with Elise again, asked for money for another venture, told her no. The arboretum is not a bank. It is for Maya. She has the patience for it, the heart for it. Elise only has eyes for what glitters. Must make this clear. See Henderson. He had seen Henderson, only for coffee. He'd never made it formal. It was a seed of proof, but was it enough to grow into a defense? I took a photo and texted it to Mr. Henderson. Then, steeling myself, I posted an update on my Reddit thread, which had gained a few hundred upvotes and lively debate. Update. Sister has begun a family smear campaign against me. I found my dad's journal. It has an entry saying the arboretum is for me, that my sister only has eyes for what glitters. My lawyer says it shows intent, but isn't a will. She is legally entitled to half. I don't have $350K. I feel like I'm losing my father all over again. The comments exploded with support, strategy, and fury. U/arboreal avenger. That journal is gold. It shows testamentary intent. Don't give up. U/cash for trees. ESH. You're both fighting over a corpse's stuff. Sell the stupid trees and move on with your lives. But the fissure wasn't just widening online or in my family, it was cracking open within me. The peaceful arboretum now felt like a battlefield. Every tree was a soldier in a war I never wanted to fight, and the general of the opposing army, my own sister, was about to launch her final legal assault. The formal letter from Elisa's lawyer arrived by certified mail. It was cold, precise, and devastating. It cited state intestacy law, demanded an immediate halt to any dissipation of assets, as if I'd cut down $1 million tree for firewood, and insisted on the appointment of a neutral executor to oversee the valuation and sale of the Finch Arboretum, with proceeds to be split equally. It gave me 30 days to respond. This was no longer a family squabble. It was a legal siege. Mr. Henderson advised a countersuit, asking the court to uphold the journal entry and the verbal wish as a holographic or a non-cumulative will, a long-shot, expensive Hail Mary. The stress was eating me alive. I'd taken a leave of absence from work. I wandered the arboretum paths, now muddy with early spring thaw, pleading with the silent trees for an answer. I updated my Reddit post, now titled, "Update, my sister is suing me for my inheritance. I found my dad's journal." It had gained traction, sitting at 12K upvotes. The community was invested. The comments were a torrent of advice, outrage, and personal stories. Top comment, U/Legal Eagle Light, 8.5K upvotes. OP, listen, intestacy is the default, but it's not absolute. The journal is huge. It shows a testamentary intent that contradicts the default law. You need to find corroborating witnesses. Did your dad ever say this to his friends, the postman, the guy at the garden center? Your case hinges on proving this wasn't a casual thought, but his settled wish. Also, get the property appraised by a horticultural specialist, not a generic realtor. Its value as a working arboretum with rare specimens may be lower than raw land value, which could lower her buyout number. U/sister is a succubus, 7.1K upvotes. I've been here. My brother did the same. I spent $50K in legal fees and lost anyway. The court doesn't care about sentiment. It cares about paper. If you can't win, negotiate hard. Drag out the process. Make her legal bills hurt. Offer her the $60K cash and a small percentage of any future profit from the arboretum, which will be zero if you run it as a preservation. Call her bluff. She wants quick cash, not a long war. U/Franklinia Friend, 5.9K upvotes, awarded Tree Hug. As a fellow rare plant collector, my heart breaks. That Franklinia alone is a piece of living history. Your sister isn't just demanding money, she's demanding the right to erase a unique living collection. That's a special kind of vandalism. Are there any local land trusts or horticultural societies that could help? A conservation easement could potentially lower the tax valuation dramatically, making it less of a target. This last comment sparked a desperate idea. What if I could change the very nature of the asset she was suing for? The earthquake hit not in court, but in the greenhouse. I was researching conservation easements when my phone rang. It was Carl Jepson, my dad's oldest friend and fellow plantsman, his voice frantic. "Maya, you need to get down to the county clerk's office now." "What? Why?" "Elise, she's there. She's filing something about the property being abandoned or neglected to force a quicker sale. I just heard from Betty at the front desk. She's claiming you're not maintaining it and it's losing value." Betrayal, sharp and acidic, flooded me. This was a new low. I drove to the county building in a blind rage. I stormed into the clerk's dim office, and there she was, Elise, in a crisp white blouse, looking every inch the aggrieved heiress, handing a sheaf of papers to a clerk. "Sign here, ma'am, affirming the statements are true," the clerk droned. "Don't you dare sign that," I said, my voice echoing in the tiled room. Elise turned, a flicker of surprise, then cold triumph in her eyes. "Maya, perfect timing. I'm just protecting our mutual asset from your emotional neglect." "Neglect? I'm here every day. You haven't set foot here since the funeral, unless you were taking pictures for your Instagram." "The grounds are a mess. The gardens are overgrown. It's an embarrassment," she said smoothly to the clerk. "I have pictures." She did. She'd taken close-ups of the most weedy beds, the one broken pane in the greenhouse, ignoring the overall health of the collection. It was a masterclass in malicious framing. "You lying," I choked out. "See?" Elise said to the clerk. "Emotional, unstable, not fit to manage a valuable estate." It was the culmination of every hurt, every dismissal, every time she'd treated our father's love as an ATM. The pressure cooker of grief, guilt, and legal terror inside me blew its seal. "You want to talk about value, Elise? Let's talk value. The value of Dad sitting alone every Christmas because you were at a ski resort with some boyfriend. The value of him listening to your endless pitches, sending you money he couldn't spare, hoping it would finally make you happy. The value of me driving here every weekend for the last 5 years while you were getting lip fillers and pretending to be famous. This place isn't an asset. It's the proof he existed. It's the only thing he had that wasn't eaten up by your bottomless need. And you want to turn it into a shopping mall or a condo development so you can pay off your credit cards? Over my dead body. You are a parasite, and I will burn this place to the ground myself before I let you profit from his life's work." The silence in the office was absolute. The clerk's eyes were wide. Elise's face was white, her composure shattered. For the first time, she looked not entitled, but exposed, seen. I turned to the clerk. "Do not process that paperwork. I am the primary occupant and caretaker. Any allegation of neglect is fraudulent. My lawyer will be in touch." I looked back at my sister. "You want a war? You've got one. But you won't get a single cent without a fight that will drain every dollar you think you're owed. And I will make sure every person in your shiny LA life knows exactly how you got it." I left her standing there, the unfiled papers in her hand. I walked to my car, trembling, the adrenaline crash imminent. I had drawn the line publicly and irrevocably. The earthquake had leveled the pretense of civility. All that was left was the rubble and the fight for what would be rebuilt. The aftershocks were immediate and seismic. First, the emotional tremor. I collapsed into my car and sobbed, great heaving sobs of rage, grief, and utter exhaustion. Then, the digital quake. I posted a raw, emotional update on Reddit detailing the county office confrontation. The community, now fully a mob on my behalf, exploded. Upvotes, 48K. Comments, 9,000. The post hit r/all. Awards, bravo, pot of coins, argentium, I'm deceased. The top comments were rallying cries. You/update me bot, pinned, subscribe me. You/scorched earth queen, 15.2K upvotes. Yas, queen, that's how you do it. I will burn it to the ground myself is the most iconic line in AITA history. You just weaponized your truth. She wasn't ready. NTA a million times. Now follow through. Make the legal fight so expensive and painful that she settles for the 60K and a signed apology. You/not a lawyer but plays one, 11.7K upvotes. OP, her filing a false neglect claim is a gift. That's bad faith. That shows the court her primary interest is not in preserving the estate's value, but in liquidating it ASAP, potentially at a loss. Document this incident meticulously. Have your lawyer subpoena the clerk and get a copy of those unfiled forms. This is leverage. U/LA Influencer Insider, 8.4K upvotes, awarded expose. As someone in that scene, if her handle is what I think it is, at Elise the Explorer, she's deeply in debt to some sketchy brand development firms. Her lifestyle is 99% financed. She's desperate. The threat to expose her to her followers is a nuclear deterrent. Her brand is aspirational wellness and family. This story is brand cyanide. I didn't want to sink to her level, but the comment gave me a cold, strategic clarity. Her weakness wasn't just legal, it was reputational. The real-world aftershocks rolled in. Mr. Henderson was simultaneously horrified and thrilled by the county office incident. "Bad faith! We can use this," he crowed. He filed a motion to have Elise's potential share calculated not on highest and best use, development land, but on current use as a specialized horticultural preserve, which would slash the valuation. He also sent a scorching letter to her lawyer threatening sanctions for the fraudulent neglect claim. Then the familial plates shifted. Aunt Linda called again, but her tone had changed. "Maya, Elise told me you threatened to destroy the property. Is that true?" "No, Aunt Linda. I said I'd rather see it destroyed than see her turn it into cash. There's a difference. She's trying to force a sale by lying to the county that I'm neglecting it." A long pause. She said you weren't taking care of Dad's things." "Come see for yourself," I said, an idea forming. "Come this weekend. Bring anyone who's heard her side. See the truth." A handful of relatives, curious and concerned, showed up. I gave them the full tour, not as a grieving daughter, but as a curator. I showed them Dad's journals, the lineage of each significant tree, the Franklinia he'd saved from a bulldozer on a development site years ago. I showed them the $60,000 meant for taxes and the spreadsheets of maintenance costs. I didn't mention Elise once. I just showed them what was at stake. I saw their perceptions realign in real time. The property wasn't a lazy asset. It was a complex, living, expensive responsibility. By the time they left, their sympathy had subtly shifted. The smear campaign had lost its potency. The most significant realignment, however, was internal. My paralyzing guilt had hardened into a fierce, protective resolve. This was no longer just about honoring Dad. It was about stopping a bully. I acted on the Reddit advice. I contacted the State Horticultural Society and a land conservation trust. The process for a conservation easement was long, but initiating it sent a powerful signal. This land's value was ecological, not developmental. Then Elise's lawyer called Mr. Henderson. They wanted to talk settlement. We met in Mr. Henderson's dusty office. Elise attended via video call from a perfectly styled living room that looked rented. She looked tired beneath the makeup. Her lawyer opened. "My client is willing to drop the suit and all claims in exchange for a one-time payment of $200,000 and the relinquishment of any claim to the cash assets." It was a retreat, but still a ransom. Mr. Henderson smiled thinly. "Given the demonstrable bad faith of the false neglect filing, the initiation of conservation easement proceedings, which will drastically reduce market valuation, and our intent to pursue testimonial evidence from multiple parties regarding my client's father's clear wishes, we counter with the following. the full $60,000 cash from the estate, a mutual release of all claims, and your client pays $5,000 towards my client's legal fees to date as a gesture of good faith. Elise's face on the screen flushed. "That's nothing. That's an insult." "It's the cash your father left," I said, speaking for the first time. "It's what he intended to be used. Take it, Elise, walk away, or we can spend the next 2 years in court, where I will show the judge your Instagram posts from St. Moritz next to your pleas of poverty, and the county clerk will testify about your little paperwork stunt. By the time it's over, the legal fees will eat everything, and the property will be protected from development forever. You'll get nothing. The $60K is on the table. It won't be next month." It was a bluff backed by a sliver of truth. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the desperation of the deeply leveraged. The glitter was fading, revealing the tarnish beneath. "I need $150K, she whispered, her bravado gone. "No," I said, the word final and clean as a snapped branch. "60. That's the legacy you left for you. Take it or leave it." There was a long, static-filled silence. Her lawyer murmured to her off-screen. Finally, she nodded, a single sharp jerk of her head. "Fine, but I want it wired within 48 hours. "Upon signed agreement," Mr. Henderson said. She disconnected without another word. I walked out into the spring afternoon, the agreement in principle settled. I had won. I had saved the trees, but the victory felt like ash. I had secured a legacy of leaves, but the family tree was now a stump. I had defended my father's wish, but in the process, I had become the hard, unforgiving thing my sister always accused me of being. The aftershocks of the battle would echo for a long time, in the quiet of the arboretum and in the permanent silence from the West Coast. A year has passed since the wire transfer cleared and the signed agreement landed, barring Elise from any future claim on the Finch Arboretum. The new landscape is both profoundly familiar and utterly changed. The property is now protected. After a lengthy process, the conservation easement with the State Horticultural Society is in place. The Arboretum can never be subdivided or developed. Its tax burden is now manageable, a fraction of what it was. Dad's $60,000 is gone, given to Elise. I used a chunk of my own savings to cover the first year of adjusted taxes and urgent repairs. I work my design job remotely from the farmhouse 3 days a week. The other days I am a gardener, a pruner, a student. I am learning the language of the trees, not just their names. I've hired Carl Jepson, Dad's old friend, as a part-time consultant. He teaches me about soil pH, pest control, the art of the strategic prune. The Cercidifilum, the one Dad worried about, is thriving after I treated the soil. This spring, for the first time, I successfully grafted a scion from the old apple tree onto new rootstock. It felt like a miracle. The house is different, too. I cleared out the clutter of decades, but kept the important things: Dad's journals, his favorite tools, the maple syrup tin, now empty. I painted the kitchen a bright, warm yellow. It's my home now, not just his. Elise is, as far as I know, in L.A. The $60,000 disappeared into the void of her debts. Her Instagram, @EliseTheExplorer, still exists, but the posts are less frequent, the gloss slightly dimmed. She has never contacted me, not a birthday text, not a Christmas card. The sister-shaped space in my life is a quiet, permanent vacancy. I miss the idea of her, the childhood version who built forts with me in the oak tree. I don't miss the woman she became. The grief for that loss is a slow, deep-rooted thing, separate from the grief for my father. Reddit played its part. After the final settlement, I posted one last update, a conclusion to the saga that had captivated thousands. The final top comment stuck with me. U/Gray Rock Gardener, 22K upvotes. OP, you didn't just win a legal battle. You took a stand for the idea that some things have value beyond money, that loyalty to a person's true legacy is more important than loyalty to blood when that blood has turned to poison. You've traded a toxic relationship for a living, breathing monument to your father's love. That's not a loss. That's the rarest kind of harvest. Go spread some mulch and be at peace. I am, most days, at peace. The Arboretum is open to the public one weekend a month by donation. A handful of people come, botany students, elderly couples, parents with curious kids. I give short tours, telling them about the trees, about my father. I never mention the lawsuit or a lease. This place is no longer defined by that conflict. Last month, a woman approached me after a tour. She was about Dad's age, with kind eyes and weathered hands. "You're Arthur's daughter," she said, not asking. "I am." She talked about you all the time, said you were the one with the patience, the heart. She smiled. He also said he was sorry he never made it official on paper. He was a man who thought trees lived forever, so he must have too. He didn't think he needed to hurry. Her words were the final piece of the puzzle, the corroborating witness I'd needed a year ago. They didn't change the legal outcome, but they changed something in my heart. They dissolved the last residue of doubt. He had meant it. It wasn't in my head. That evening, I sat under the ginkgo tree, my tree, as its leaves began their turn to brilliant gold. I thought about value. Elise valued the immediate, the liquid, the glittering. My father valued the slow, the rooted, the growing. For a year, I thought I'd had to choose one world or the other. But I was wrong. The new landscape taught me that true inheritance isn't about receiving an asset. It's about accepting a responsibility. It's about becoming the steward of a story written in growing rings and leaf patterns, in journals and whispered wishes. The money is gone, the sister is gone, but the story remains, and it's still being written, one season, one graft, one new sapling at a time. I am Maya Finch. I am a graphic designer, and I am the keeper of the trees. That is the inheritance I fought for, and the one I will, quietly and without drama, tend until it's my turn to pass it on. It is enough. It is more than enough. Which side of that story were you on? Let me know in the comments. And if you love diving into these Reddit rabbit holes with me, subscribe to Reddit Be Mine. We're building the best storytelling community on YouTube, and we'd love to have you. Click that sub button and stay tuned.